Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly woke up and said, wow, I feel amazing today? Not just awake, but restored, rebalanced, like your mind, body, and spirit all clicked into alignment. For too many of us after 60, that feeling becomes a distant memory. Nights get longer, sleep gets lighter. We toss, we turn, and somehow we greet each new morning with even heavier eyelids and slower steps. But what if I told you the answer isn't in a pill bottle or some expensive sleep gadget, but in your kitchen? That's right. Real, healing food. The kind your grandparents may have eaten. The kind science is finally catching up with. Today, we're not just talking about nutrition. We're talking about transformation through food. I've spent years researching natural sleep cycles, circadian health, and aging biology. And I can tell you this. As we grow older, sleep stops being automatic. It becomes something we must learn to nurture again. And food is the most overlooked, most powerful way to do just that. This video isn't just a list of 6 foods. It's a guide, a roadmap for reclaiming the kind of deep, uninterrupted rest that slows aging, strengthens memory, and brings joy back into your mornings. So if you felt trapped in an endless loop of fatigue and restless nights, stay with me. By the end, you'll know exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and how to create your own evening ritual that leads to the most peaceful sleep of your life. Don't skip ahead, and whatever you do, don't leave before the end. Because the last food we'll talk about isn't just helpful. It's a scientifically proven sleep superfood. It's what your aging brain has been waiting for, and most people are completely overlooking it. Let's begin with something deceptively simple. A fruit you've likely eaten thousands of times, but never like this. First, bananas. The bedtime reset. You didn't know you needed. We often overlook the things we see every day, like the humble banana. Most people think of it as a breakfast item or a post-walk snack. But for older adults struggling with poor sleep or restless legs, bananas may be one of nature's most effective nighttime tools. The secret lies in 3 nutrients working in harmony. Magnesium calms the nervous system and eases muscle tension. Potassium supports heart rhythm and helps muscles relax. Vitamin B6 plays a vital role in the production of serotonin and melatonin, the 2 hormones directly tied to restful sleep. Think of this as a nutrient trio that sends a signal to your body. It's time to wind down. Unlike pills, which force sleep through sedation, bananas support your brain's natural pathways to drift into deep rest. Magnesium deficiency is shockingly common in adults over 60, often going undetected. This mineral alone impacts more than 300 biochemical reactions in the body, including those responsible for calming the brain and balancing neurotransmitters. One study published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences found that older adults supplementing with magnesium had significantly improved sleep time, sleep efficiency, and reduced nighttime awakenings. And bananas, being a whole food source, deliver magnesium in a highly bioavailable form. But that's just the start. Meet Rosa, 65, a retired piano teacher from Houston. For years, she struggled with restless legs and frequent nighttime awakenings. Her doctor prescribed pills. They helped, but left her groggy, forgetful, and dependent. Rosa was hesitant when her daughter suggested something as simple as a banana. But with nothing to lose, she tried it. 1 ripe banana, about an hour before bed. By day 4, her twitching reduced. By week 2, she was sleeping through the night. Her new ritual, a warm banana pudding made with oat milk, a sprinkle of cinnamon, and gratitude in every spoonful. Rosa swears it wasn't just the banana. It was the act of caring for herself again, reclaiming agency over her nights. And guess what? Her story isn't unique. Thousands have rediscovered sleep through food. You might be next. If you're new to using bananas for sleep, here are a few things to try. Choose speckled bananas, slightly overripe for best results. Pair with a small scoop of unsweetened almond butter for extra magnesium and healthy fats. Prefer a drink? Blend half a banana with warm oat milk and a dash of nutmeg. Prefer resistant starch? Eat a greener banana earlier in the evening. The prebiotic fiber in it feeds gut bacteria that produce sleep-supportive compounds like GABA. But above all, remember, this isn't a magic switch. It's a signal to your body. Done consistently, it becomes a language your body learns again. How to rest, how to recover, how to heal. Let the banana be your gentle invitation to sleep. If you liked what we shared in the first part, comment with the number 1 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers tailored to your situation. Second, almonds. They're small, crunchy, and often tossed into salads without a second thought. But almonds? They're far more than just a snack. For those of us over 60, almonds may quietly be one of the most powerful tools we have to restore deep, unbroken sleep. The magic of almonds lies in their magnesium content. This essential mineral acts like a conductor in the symphony of sleep, calming overactive nerves, reducing nighttime muscle cramps, and even lowering your heart rate as you wind down. But almonds don't stop there. They also support healthy sleep by lowering cortisol, that stress hormone that rises when your mind replays regrets or anxieties at 2 a.m. Regulating blood sugar, helping prevent those sudden nighttime wake-ups caused by dips in glucose. Supplying vitamin E, a potent antioxidant that clears out chronic inflammation, especially in the brain, allowing for deeper, uninterrupted rest. And here's something few people realize. Blood sugar crashes are one of the most common, yet overlooked causes of nighttime awakenings, especially in older adults. Almonds, with their healthy fats and fiber, help maintain stable energy levels throughout the night, giving your body a gentle, sustained rhythm that supports restorative sleep. How to eat almonds for sleep. Here's how to get the most from almonds in your evening routine. 1. Eat them 1 hour before bed. This allows time for magnesium to enter your bloodstream and begin relaxing your system. 2. Keep it light. A small handful, around 7 to 10 almonds, is enough. More than that may burden digestion. 3. Soak them first. Soak in water for 6 to 8 hours and peel the skins. This deactivates anti-nutrients like phytic acid, which can block magnesium absorption. 4. Pair them smartly. Combine with a small slice of banana, or drink warm oat milk to enhance the absorption and calming synergy. If you want something extra comforting, try this simple bedtime drink. Almond milk sleep tonic. Blend 1 cup warm almond milk, add a pinch of cinnamon, stir in a drop of raw honey, optional, sip slowly under dim light. It's like giving your nervous system a hug. Not all almonds are created equal. Avoid roasted, salted, or sugar-coated versions, especially before bed. The additives, excessive sodium, or hidden sugar, can disrupt your blood pressure or spike insulin, both of which interfere with deep sleep cycles. Stick to raw, unsalted almonds or homemade almond milk. Your body will thank you. If you liked what we shared in the second part, comment with the number 2 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers tailored to your situation. Third, cherries. They're sweet, small, and often seen as a summer treat. But cherries, these radiant red fruits, hold a secret that could revolutionize your nighttime routine. Far beyond their bright color and refreshing flavor, cherries, especially tart cherries, are one of the few natural food sources of melatonin. Yes, the very same hormone your brain produces to tell your body it's time to sleep. Melatonin isn't just about falling asleep. It governs the entire circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour cycle that controls not just sleep and wake times, but mood regulation, immune function, and even digestion. As we age, our melatonin production declines. By age 60, the pineal gland, which produces melatonin, is significantly less active than it was in our younger years. That's one reason why so many older adults feel tired during the day, but still struggle to fall or stay asleep at night. That's where cherries step in. A study from Louisiana State University found that drinking tart cherry juice twice a day increased sleep time by over 80 minutes per night in older adults with insomnia. That's not just a statistic, it's the difference between exhaustion and rejuvenation. Cherries contain natural melatonin, helps trigger the brain's sleep-wake signal. Anthocyanins, potent antioxidants that reduce brain inflammation and oxidative stress, which are known to interfere with deep sleep stages. Tryptophan, the amino acid that serves as a building block for serotonin and melatonin. Here's what makes cherries especially important for those of us in our 60s, 70s, and beyond. They don't sedate you. They nudge your body back toward its natural rhythm. Think of them like a compass, gently helping your internal clock find true north again. How to eat cherries for sleep. To unlock their full benefits, timing and preparation matter. 1. Eat 10 to 15 cherries or drink 1/2 cup tart cherry juice about 1 hour before bed. 2. Use fresh or frozen cherries only. Dried cherries are often loaded with added sugar, which can spike energy and work against your sleep. 3. Avoid mixing with sugar-heavy desserts. Cherry pie is delicious, but not sleep-friendly. Try this calming bedtime treat: cherry sleep smoothie. 1/2 cup tart cherries, fresh or frozen. 1/2 banana. 1 cup unsweetened oat milk. 1 teaspoon flax seeds. Blend until creamy and sip slowly under low lighting, or simply enjoy cherries by themselves as a small bowl snack. Their gentle sweetness and natural compounds are a soothing way to signal the end of the day. If you liked what we shared in the third part, comment with the number 3 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers tailored to your situation. Fourth, kiwi. It's fuzzy, bright, and often overlooked in favor of flashier fruits. But make no mistake, kiwi might just be one of the most scientifically validated natural sleep aids available today. Behind that vibrant green flesh lies a powerhouse of sleep-supporting nutrients, working in perfect harmony to relax your body and reset your internal clock. For older adults who are tired of being tired, kiwi could become your new best bedtime ally. Let's break down what makes kiwi a sleep-enhancing superstar. 1. Rich in serotonin. This essential neurotransmitter is crucial for regulating sleep, mood, and emotional balance. It also acts as a direct precursor to melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep time to your brain. 2. High in antioxidants. Kiwi delivers potent doses of vitamin C and vitamin E, both of which help neutralize oxidative stress. This type of stress silently disrupts your sleep by inflaming brain tissue and overstimulating your nervous system. 3. Contains folate, a key vitamin linked to reducing insomnia symptoms, especially in older adults whose levels tend to naturally decline. 4. Supports digestion. Kiwi is loaded with fiber and natural enzymes that promote gut health. And remember, your gut produces about 90% of your body's serotonin. If your gut isn't happy, your brain won't rest. But here's what really seals the deal. In a landmark study by Taiwan's Taipei Medical University, participants who ate 2 kiwis 1 hour before bed experienced a 35% faster onset of sleep, a 28% improvement in sleep duration, and a 42% increase in sleep quality. That's not just helpful, it's life-changing for those struggling with fragmented nights and daytime exhaustion. How to eat kiwi for sleep. Here's how to get the most out of this fuzzy fruit. 1. Eat 1 to 2 kiwis about 60 minutes before bedtime. 2. Don't peel it. Scrub the fuzz gently and eat the whole fruit. The skin contains even more antioxidants and fiber than the inside. 3. Pair it with a banana. The potassium and tryptophan in bananas work beautifully with the serotonin in kiwi to support melatonin production. Want something cozy and creamy? Try this: kiwi banana sleep smoothie. 1 peeled banana, 1 whole kiwi, with skin washed. 1 cup warm oat milk. A dash of cinnamon or nutmeg. Blend until smooth and drink slowly, with soft music playing or dim lighting. Your nervous system will understand. It's time to let go. Important note: while kiwi is a sleep hero, avoid pairing it with caffeine or heavy late-night meals. These can override its calming effects and create internal conflict signals. Also, a few people may have mild kiwi sensitivity, especially if prone to oral allergies. Always listen to your body. If you feel tingling or discomfort, try a half portion first. If you liked what we shared in the fourth part, comment with the number 4 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers tailored to your situation. Fifth, oatmeal. It's warm, it's comforting, and it's probably sitting in your pantry right now. Oatmeal may be the last thing you think of as a sleep aid, but that's about to change. In the quiet hours of the evening, when your body's preparing to unwind, oatmeal offers something most foods don't, a slow, sustained signal to your nervous system that says, you're safe to rest now. Oatmeal is more than a breakfast staple. It's a complete package of sleep-supporting nutrients. Magnesium helps reduce cortisol levels, calm nerve activity, and relax muscle tension. Zinc, essential for the production of melatonin, your body's master sleep hormone. Slow digesting carbohydrates, stabilize blood sugar, and prevent energy crashes that can wake you in the middle of the night. Tryptophan, an amino acid found in oats that gets converted into serotonin, then melatonin, easing you into rest. This nutrient synergy creates a powerful effect. Instead of sedation, your body receives a nutritional nudge into natural sleep readiness. In fact, studies have shown that people who regularly consume oats in the evening not only fall asleep faster, but also spend more time in deep, restorative sleep stages, the kind that recharges the brain, heals the body, and improves memory. For seniors especially, this is a game changer. As we age, our blood sugar regulation weakens. It's not uncommon to wake between 2 and 3 a.m., not because of dreams or noise, but due to a sudden drop in glucose. Your body panics and triggers a cortisol spike. Your brain wakes up thinking there's an emergency. Oatmeal prevents that. Its slow-burning carbs maintain a gentle energy flow throughout the night, keeping your system calm, steady, and uninterrupted. How to eat oatmeal for sleep. To make oatmeal a nighttime ally, preparation is key. Here's how to get the most out of it. 1. Use rolled oats or steel-cut oats. Avoid instant packets loaded with sugar and additives. 2. Cook with oat milk or almond milk. These plant-based milks enhance the calming properties and create a creamier texture. 3. Add nuts or seeds. A spoonful of walnuts, flax seeds, or almonds brings in healthy fats and more magnesium. 4. Spice it right. Sprinkle a pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg for flavor and added blood sugar support. Helpful tip: avoid loading your oats with dried fruits or sugar. These spike your insulin and counteract the calming effects. Keep your toppings simple, whole, and grounding. Also, timing matters. Eat oatmeal 60 to 90 minutes before sleep, not right before bed, to give your body time to begin digesting and absorbing its soothing benefits. If you liked what we shared in the fifth part, comment with the number 5 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers tailored to your situation. Sixth, walnuts. They may look like little brains, and for good reason. Walnuts are among the most powerful foods for brain health. But what many don't know is that these humble nuts are also deeply connected to one of the most essential needs of aging well: restorative sleep. When your nights are fragmented and your mornings foggy, walnuts might be the natural bridge between exhaustion and true rejuvenation. Walnuts bring a rare trifecta of nutrients to the sleep equation. 1. Omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. These essential fats are the raw materials your body needs to produce melatonin, the hormone that governs your sleep-wake cycles. 2. Magnesium, a well-documented muscle relaxant and nervous system calmer, crucial for initiating deep sleep. 3. Tryptophan, an amino acid that helps create serotonin and melatonin in the brain. But perhaps the most unique aspect of walnuts is this: they don't just help your body create melatonin. They also contain preformed, bioavailable melatonin, ready to be absorbed and used immediately by your brain. This means that eating walnuts can have both a short-term calming effect and a long-term circadian benefit, especially for older adults whose natural melatonin production may have declined over the years. Let's talk honestly. Most seniors aren't just looking for more sleep. They're looking for better sleep, the kind where your mind turns off, your body repairs, and you wake up feeling clear, not groggy. Walnuts help make that kind of sleep possible by working through multiple channels. They stabilize blood sugar, preventing 2 a.m. crashes that jolt you awake. Their omega-3 fats reduce nighttime inflammation, especially in the brain. Their tryptophan boosts serotonin, improving emotional balance and reducing evening anxiety. And because they nourish the brain directly, walnuts may also support better dreaming, memory processing, and next morning mental clarity. That's more than rest. That's recovery. How to eat walnuts for sleep. To use walnuts as a sleep aid, here's how to incorporate them smartly into your nighttime routine. 1. Eat 4 to 5 raw walnuts about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. 2. Soak them in water for 4 hours beforehand. This reduces phytic acid and improves digestion and nutrient absorption. 3. Combine with a carb source like banana or kiwi. Carbs help tryptophan cross the blood-brain barrier more efficiently. Tips for best results. Avoid salted or roasted walnuts. Added sodium and heat processing can diminish the sleep benefits. Don't combine with caffeine or sugary desserts. These will override the melatonin effect. Stick to small portions. Too many nuts at once may cause digestive stress in sensitive stomachs. And finally, be consistent. The body responds best to rhythm. When you give it the same gentle cues every evening, it begins to trust again. Your nervous system unwinds, your brain quiets, and sleep becomes something natural, not forced. If you liked what we shared in the 6th part, comment with the number 6 below. If you're still unsure or disagree, comment with the number 0 and tell us why. We're here to listen, and we'll do our best to give you thoughtful answers, tailored to your situation. As we grow older, sleep becomes less of a guarantee and more of a reflection of how we care for our bodies, how we manage our thoughts, and how much we value peace. The 7 foods we explored today are not miracle cures, but they are powerful invitations. They invite you to slow down, to nourish yourself with intention, and to honor your evenings as sacred. Because they are. Sleep is not just a time when nothing happens. It's the very process by which everything important in your body takes place. Your heart heals, your brain detoxifies, your immune system strengthens, and your soul quietly and gently is restored. Real restorative sleep is not something you find in a pill. It's something you return to, step by step, habit by habit, meal by meal. Maybe it starts with a banana eaten under soft light. Maybe it's a small bowl of oats with walnuts and cinnamon. Whatever it is, remember this. Sleep is a rhythm. The more consistently you support that rhythm, the more your body remembers how to do what it was built to do. Rest, reset, and renew. If this video spoke to you in any way, if it helped you understand your body a little better, or made you feel just a bit more hopeful about aging well, then I'd love for you to join this growing community. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you care about. You never know who might need these words today. And most importantly, I want to hear from you. What part of this video resonated most with you? Leave a comment below. I read everyone, and your story might just inspire someone else. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of Daily Elder Advice. Until next time, stay well, stay wise, and sleep peacefully.